YouTube channel for year 7. Just wanted to also make sure everybody, hopefully you're doing all right out there, and wishes and stay safe and be healthy, and we'll see each other very soon. So we're going to start off with some starter questions to the lesson that Ms. Horrigan did in our last video. So I want you to think about these questions, write them down as usual, or think them to yourself, right? Just test your knowledge, test your revision of check your understanding. Okay, so how did the barons limit the power of King Henry III? Okay, so I want you to tell me, right, how did the barons limit the power of King Henry III? Okay, and what are the 3 parts of the Middle Ages British government? All right, so you can write those down. You can think to yourself, pause the video, review it, so that you can think of what are the potential answers, and so you check that you understood the last lesson. Okay. So I want you to think about, how did the barons limit the power of the king? So the barons limited the power of the king by establishing the idea of the 2-party system, right? The 2-house system in Parliament. Okay, so you had the creation of the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and the British barons being involved with the king, so that the king was not the only person that had complete control over the country. The barons wanted to have a say and make sure the people had a say, in essence, into what was going on in the government. Okay, and what are the 3 parts of the British Parliament? Obviously the King, House of Commons, House of Lords. Okay, so but today we're going to talk about how what made the lower class of society very, very angry at one point. Okay, because we just established how the king was ruling, and then now there was issues with barons and issues with people who were a little bit higher in society, and they felt that they weren't being treated as fairly as they could. They felt that the kings had absolute power, and they did not share that power, amongst other people in society. You saw that with King John and the Magna Carta. Now you see with the creation of Parliament, right? People want more equality between the king and his subjects, his people. Okay, so but in those situations, like the Magna Carta, creation of Parliament, those were for the upper class of people. But we're going to really focus on today are what's going on, what are the viewpoints, how do people feel in the lowest part of society, the peasants. Okay, so why were peasants so angry at one point? Okay, so after Henry III is his son, okay, his grandson, sorry, okay, so his Richard II. Okay, so Richard II becomes king when he's 10 years old. Okay, because his father and his father, who was supposed to be king, dies before Henry III dies, and his oldest brother dies. So people who were ahead of him in line all die before King Henry dies. So that leaves the throne to Richard II. Okay, and Richard at this time is just a boy, right? He's just a young king. So, but as what happens back in the Middle Ages, if there was a young king, there's going to be advisors, there's going to be adults that are going to help him rule the country. Okay, and those adults are, in a sense, greedy, and some people feel that they're corrupt and greedy. So basically, they institute more taxes on the lower class, because those advisors want to become richer, and they see the people as a way to gain money. Okay. Also, Richard goes to war with France at this point. Okay, in 1381, Richard goes to the war with France, and going to war isn't cheap, so you need money. Okay, and the way you're going to get money is by taxing your people. So they institute something called a poll tax. So basically, a poll tax was a new tax for anybody who was living in England. So this new tax, okay, upset a lot of lower class citizens. Okay, they became angry because they were already poor, they were already struggling. Okay, and now this tax just takes away more money from the money that they were already making, which wasn't a lot. Okay, so this made people extremely upset, and people were already having issues anyway. Okay, because people were still working in that feudal system. Okay, We're still working in that feudal system. So it's now 300 years of this idea of a feudal system where people are going to be working on the land of barons and knights and lords, and they have to give up their food, and they have to give money, and they have to pay taxes to people for them to live on the land. They do not own their own land. Okay, so people are getting peasants are really getting frustrated with this system. Okay, and that's going to lead to a lot of problems. All right. Also, what's going on is something that we're going to be a little bit talk about, but we're not going to get as much into it yet. Is the Black Death. The Black Death was a plague that at this point in time had run rampant in England, and it killed many, many, many people. So people were working for higher wages during the plague because there was less amount of people. People were dying. So if you were working still, if you were healthy and you were working, you were making more money because you were asked to do more things. Okay? But after the plague was done, at this point, this is after the plague. After the plague was done, okay, Richard didn't want to keep paying people higher wages. So he brought back the wages that people were making before the plague. Okay, so this upset a lot of peasants who were making more money, but now King Richard and those greedy advisors don't want to pay people more money. Those barons don't want to pay people more money. So they bring the amount of money that they had to pay them way back before the plague. Okay? So there's people are upset about their life, how much money they're making, and then there's other people, like a priest, right, called John Ball. So John Ball was creating a following where he was telling people and he was encouraging people to understand that all men are created equal under God, okay, and that people should be equal because no man is better than any other under God, right? He was pushing for fairer laws, and that people should be there shouldn't be a difference between rich and poor. Okay, so this priest, this man was basically encouraging these ideas that people should be equal. There should be no rich and poor. You should distribute out so that everybody is living, relatively comfortable. Okay, and it's a really revolutionary idea at the time because there was, for thousands of years, there was this system where people were at the top and there was a clear difference between rich and poor. So what sparked this revolution? Where there's going to be a peasant revolution. People are going to revolt against the way of life that they have right now. Okay, so King Richard sends out people representatives to go collect taxes, and a group of angry peasants who are living in Essex, okay, they don't want to pay this tax. They're angry with this tax, and they attack the tax collectors, and they kill all of them but one. And one of them, makes his way. He escapes. He makes his way back to London and reports to the king what is going on. Okay, and at that same time that he reports to the king what happened, other different people all around the area are doing the same thing. They're revolting. They're attacking the tax collectors. They're basically saying, we're not going to pay this tax. We're not going to pay the tax because we're already poor and we're standing up for our own rights. Okay, so this led to what's known as the Peasant Revolt. Okay, where thousands, almost 60,000 people are going to eventually march to London to show how upset they are about the way that England is being run by King Richard. Okay, so what you're going to do, right? So the Peasant Revolt, right, is what our topic is today. The Peasant Revolt started in 1381. All right, and it's because, like I said, those angry peasants rebelled all over southeast England. Okay, leading to people even marching to London to confront the king. So what I want you to do for our first task, there's textbook pages, textbook resources on the folder. I want you to read pages 118 and 119. Okay, it is pictures of the whole story of the Peasant Revolt. Okay, I want you to read those textbook pages. I want you to look at that story, all right, and to find out what happened during the revolt. Okay, and once you read the story, once you read the whole cartoon story of the revolt, I want you to answer these two questions. I want you to tell me, do you agree with the strategy that the peasants used of violence? Do you agree with that? Do you think that that's going to be a good way to make changes in England? Why or why not? So explain your answer. Okay, don't just say yes. It was the best way because violence. Da 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 da. I want you to tell me why in this situation was violence a good way, or why was violence a bad way in this situation. I want you to explain more. Okay, and then to answer the next question, do you think this revolt will be successful? Okay, so the revolt happens, you're going to read about the whole revolt, okay, and then I want you to make a guess, hypothesize, which means guess. Will the peasants get what they want? Do you think will be successful? Okay, you'll read the story, but it doesn't tell you what happens at the end yet. I want you to read it. I want you to think, just to guess, based on all the events. Do you think it's going to be successful? Will they get what they want? And explain why. Okay, so you pause the video, read those textbook pages, okay, and answer those questions, and you can come back. Okay. So after you've answered those questions, after you've read about the details of the peasant revolt, all right, so we're going to talk about now what happened next. Okay, so you know that 60,000 people marched into London. They were already destroying, and they were destroying villages, and they were killing people along the way. But they reach London, and they're burning down the city. Okay, they're revolting, and they have their leader Wat Tyler, right? They already met with the king before, and they didn't come to an agreement, and they're still destroying more of the city. And King Richard is basically saying, we have to do something about this. We cannot let the people take over the city. Okay, so what King Richard decides to do, he's going to meet with Wat Tyler again to negotiate what's going to happen, and to negotiate what do the peasants want, what does this revolt want, and how can they solve it. All right, so they meet together. Wat Tyler has way more men than what King Richard brings. Okay, so King Richard knows he has to be nicer to these rebels because there's far more of them than there are of the king's men. Okay, so Tyler demanded that the church divide all the lands that it owned and give it out to the people. Okay, so basically, Wat Tyler wanted people to gain more land and to have basically take land from the rich and give it to the poor. Okay, that were kind of similar to the whole Robin Hood idea. Okay, and King Richard agrees to this. Okay, he's at the mercy of the peasants. He's at the mercy of the peasants, and he agrees to this. Okay, so what I want you to do next, I want you to click that link, or you can check the playlist in our YouTube channel, and I want you to watch this video. Okay, about what happens after this meeting between King Richard and Wat Tyler. Okay, so enjoy and come right back. Alright, so as you watch the video, you see what's happened, you notice what's happened, and next thing I want you to do, after you've watched that video, you kind of know what happens, but right, you're going to read firsthand, you're going to read these sources, you're going to read firsthand account of what people said, okay, happened at that time as well. We want to get more basis and more background information from many different sources to understand, okay, what happened. All right, so I want you, the next task, I want you to look at the next resource pages 120 and 121. I want you to read sources A and B, okay, and I want you to answer these questions about it. Okay, so I want you to find two ways in which the two sources are different. So how do these two sources say different information? Find two ways in which the sources agree with each other. How are the two sources similar? And I want you to tell me, why do you think no peasants wrote down what happened? So why do you think it was only people of higher standing, or people who weren't actually the ones who were rebelling? Why do you think they were not the ones who were writing first-hand accounts? Why is it other people? Okay? And lastly, I want you to look at source C, which is the picture. And what does the picture show, and what does it tell you? Does it tell you anything about Richard as a person? Does it tell you anything about King Richard as a person? Okay? So I want you to pause the video. Okay, I want you to do those tasks. Okay, so you can get a full understanding about all the information, about all the events that happened in the Peasant Revolt. Okay, so as you read about, as you watched in the video, okay, all the revolt was happening, the rebellion was happening. King Richard was kind of at the mercy of Wat Tyler and his men, okay, until Wat Tyler was killed, right, was murdered and killed and attacked right in that meeting, okay? So people were, his peasants, his people that he was accompanied by, those 25,000 soldiers, were shocked of what happened and shocked that their leader had just been killed right in front of them and stabbed in the neck. Okay, but King Richard jumps to action, okay, right as that is happening, and he proclaims that I am your king and I'm going to take care of everything and everything's going to be all right. Okay? So that avoided more conflict. The peasants were about to start attacking King Richard's men and probably would have killed the king, but the king had to jump into action and basically say, I'm your king and everyone should be peaceful and I'm going to handle things and I'm going to make it better. Okay? So King Richard avoided any more conflict. All those peasants stopped attacking the city. They stopped burning things down. They all went home. Okay? But King Richard didn't follow what he said. King Richard lied. Okay? He lied about all the things he was going to do. He lied about distributing land. He lied about making everybody equal. He lied about he was going to be peaceful and he was going to help everybody. King Richard turns around and with the help of his advisors, they seek out all the leaders of this revolt and they kill them. They find all the leaders of the revolt, people like John Ball, all the people that were working with Wat Tyler, and they kill them and they put them on display in London Tower, London Bridge. Okay? And they do that to give a message to all the people of London and all the people of England that this is what happens if you try to rebel against us. Okay, so it was a very different time period, right, where leaders had to show their power and they also had to, appear to be a good person, but in reality, okay, they had to show how strong they were. Okay, so King Richard did lie. He didn't give the peasants exactly what they wanted. He didn't give them what they demanded. He sought revenge against those who organized this whole thing. Okay, to make a statement to everybody else that you're not going to revolt and overthrow my country. Okay, but good things that came out of this is that the peasants' opinions, the peasants' demands were heard, and they were eventually given certain types of rights, certain types of advantages. But it took for the next 50 years for these types of things to happen. Okay, so they got rid of the poll tax. People were never taxed as much as they were at this point, okay? And the peasants, all their demands about getting rid of the feudal system, peasants being able to own land, peasants not working for barons and knights and things like that, that was eventually eliminated, okay? But it took 50 years for the country to do that, okay? So it took more time and different kings to be come into power to listen to the people of the demands that they wanted at this time. Okay? So it's a kind of an example of how England was changing gradually. It went from kings ruled everybody, and the king made all the decisions, the king owned all the land, and the king had all the say, and everyone had to follow, to now more people are speaking up. More people are challenging the way of life. Barons are challenging the way of life, creating the Magna Carta, creating Parliament, and the peasants are making their voices heard, right? Even though they have to do it violently, they still get their voices heard, which leads to changes going on in England. Okay, so this is the Middle Ages, what we've been talking about, is a very interesting time of change, and it's really what shapes England to be the type of empire and the type of strong country that it becomes later in the future. All right, so that is our lesson for today. Make sure that you work on those tasks. Make sure that you do your best. Hopefully this video has been a little bit better, a good explanation, made things easier when you're reading along. And I hope that you keep working hard, keep staying positive, and eventually we'll be back in school and then we can have our normal routine. Okay, remember, if you have any questions, email Ms. Horrigan or I. If you have any tasks that you complete, make sure you're emailing them to all your teachers, not just us. But Thanks for watching, and